Von Wertungen sieht sehr gut aus. Ich habe gerade in die Kommentare schon reingeguckt. Absolute Katastrophe natürlich. Also wohl wieder so ein 0815 Omni leider. Aber ja. Die kann man nur farmen all day long. Was sollst du noch anderes machen? Hä? Und zwar Coach Kolton versus Vegan Gains. Ich habe natürlich keine Ahnung, wer das ist. Und was ist das, ein Moderator oder sowas? Ich hoffe nicht. Auf jeden Fall starten wir da rein, Leute. Und wir sind wie immer auf der Suche nach den Reductios. Let's go. Vielleicht wird Veganismus ja endlich widerlegt. Kann man ja nicht wissen. Man weiß ja nicht, wer gegen einen antritt, right? So, deswegen let's see and have a tea, würde ich sagen.
Man.
Kati ist nicht da, oder? Ich wollte was fragen wegen der Thunfischpizza.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Just doing my own stream.
Right now?
So, Audio sollte gut sein. Wenn irgendwas mit Audio ist, sagt Bescheid. Zu laut, zu leise das Video oder so.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So are we on your stream as we're streaming?
Yeah.
That's crazy news, man.
Nice.
How have you been? I've literally watched your content, God, like years ago, dude, and I've not really kept up with you since then.
Yeah, I've actually just started getting into your stuff. I like it. The Connor Murphy
Appreciate
video where you're suspecting Tony Huge and him might have played a role. It's plausible. Like, I've talked to Connor directly. He is weird. And the psychedelic crap that he got into, some people, after doing that, especially very heavy doses for a long time, it can make them prone to violence. There's actually a big association between marijuana use, heavy marijuana use, and violence.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Tony Huge, though,
Ja, deswegen smoke ich sowas nicht und bin natürlich auch völlig dagegen.
being a lawyer, he is a weird guy himself, and he kind of lives a bit on the fringes of society. It's not totally unbelievable, but I've actually had a few friends who know him, paid for some of his consulting. Again, I don't know him personally, though, right? Like, I'm not super close to him, so I don't know if he's the type of guy who would rage out and, like, plan a murder scheme.
I don't know, right? Like, it doesn't seem necessarily all there. I don't think anyone is if they have, like, a full harem of girls and, you know, like, the whole baby mama
He's
thing that he
super
has
into
going on.
ladyboys, too.
Yeah, like, they made this weird OnlyFans post with the ladyboy, and that just is really where I kind of was like, there's something going on, right? And I don't know what it is. I know that they both use recreational drugs, and I don't know if it's just a copious amount of recreational drugs and then just repeated abuse of those things that have developed psychiatric disorders.
I know he does a lot of coping with kratom. Oh, I'm not addicted.
Yeah.
I take it every day, but I'm not addicted. And I try every other different strain, but I'm not addicted. So, yeah.
And it's absolutely not addicting at all. Anyone can take this. It's fine. It's like, no, dude, like, it's very clearly addictive.
His advice on drug use in general is just absolutely bonkers. He looked fucking amazing before he even started taking steroids. I was actually surprised why he'd even bother. That guy seems like he has some weird personal issues. Like, if I looked like that physique, I wouldn't bother.
Right.
And then on top of that, especially when he had that bald dude he was hanging out with for a while, they were recommending really weird drug protocols, like take massive amounts of human growth hormone indefinitely without stopping. It'll make you live forever. Like, there's weird shit going on, certainly with his drug use, that could definitely explain, you know, like a murder plot.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it, right? Like, there's a lot of destabilized behaviors going on, and I just feel like I don't know if anything would have transpired that was truly like him causing the murder, right, or inciting people to do the murder for him. But I just feel like there had to have been some discourse between the both of them that wasn't healthy, and someone misinterpreted it or something. And because the way the bathroom was laid out, I don't know, right? And I don't want to get too far into this. But
he heard the murder. Like,
yeah.
So I think best case scenario, he knew something about what was going to happen and did nothing about it. That's like the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Worst
It's
case, he had
definitely
something to do with it.
That's what I'm leaning towards, because at the end of the day, if it's in your house, you're there with the police, you're there with the reporters, you're doing live streams like shortly after the fact, like a few days after the fact. I don't know. I just not the kind of behavior I would be.
Well, bro,
following if that
there's
was-
just no way you're literally next door to somebody. You can hear everything through the wall, and this guy's getting the shit kicked out of him, crap getting
Yeah.
thrown all around the room, and then his skull literally gets caved in.
smash
And
in,
you don't
yeah.
call the police or do anything. Well, I waited 3 days and I wanted to give him privacy. Like, yeah,
Come
right.
on, man. Yeah. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So what do you want to debate about, man?
Yeah, so I'm vegan. Veganism's my thing. I think it's kind of not a talked about enough thing in the fitness world. Like some people are talking about, like I am seeing more often people are talking about you need more fiber in your diet. Fruits and vegetables are really good. Stan Efferding is kind of warmed up to the importance of fruits and vegetables in your diet, but the ethical side is really important, and I think a lot of people are afraid of going fully vegan because they're worried about like soy having feminizing effects or not getting enough protein. So I think that's why a lot of people don't like really kind of jump on the vegan thing. So
Also ich gehe mal davon aus, der debattiert den da oben links.
if you're interested, we can talk about the ethics and stuff, and maybe you'd be a little more interested in the nutrition side of things.
Yeah, I mean the ethics side of it, I don't necessarily like. The tough part is I don't feel an ethical debate even there, because for me it just doesn't even really matter. And I know that sounds maybe cruel or inconsiderate, but it just really doesn't bother me to any extent that would make me care enough to even.
Der will über die Ethics nicht reden. Was genau willst du damit sagen? Ich meine, du verstehst, dass du deine Position offenlegst und dann wird die gepresst. Wenn du keine Angst hast, widerlegt zu werden, warum würdest du die dann nicht präsentieren wollen? Damit kann man ja viel anfangen mit der Aussage I don't care. Damit kann man ganz viel anfangen. Weil du dieses I don't care ja auf andere Szenarien ausweiten kannst. Also du kannst einfach eine logische Ausweitung machen, dann testen, ob der wirklich nicht cared.
Think about it twice.
Well, does
I
animal
will
abuse
say-
bother you just in general? Like if somebody was kicking their dog?
Absolutely, right? Like I have dogs.
Er kann natürlich die Debatte abkürzen und sagen, der ist Nihilist, und dann lässt der Haustier-Entität einmal laufen, beißt er rein, dann normales Entität beißt er rein, dann ist die Debatte auch zu Ende nach 10 Sekunden. Aber ja, hoffentlich nicht.
I love animals. I have a service dog,
Hoffentlich hast du keinen Psycho da vor dir, die man wegsperren sollte.
but for
So
me,
I think it
there's
does. I think it does matter to you.
I love animals.
Yeah. Just in general, like if somebody was kicking their dog.
Absolutely, right? Like I have dogs. I love animals. I have a
I have dogs, I love animals. Ja, das fängt ja gut an.
service dog, but for
So
me,
I think it
there's
does. I think it does matter.
Damit kann man schon sehr, sehr viel anfangen, siehst du? Die ganzen Props, die er jetzt schon rausgelegt hat, mindestens 3, mit denen kann man ja sehr viel anfangen. Du hast doch schon alles, was du brauchst.
Matter to you. I think
Ja, wie gesagt, ich mag Vegan Gains Debattenstil, nicht Debattenart. Der presst nicht zu Ende.
you just haven't really thought about it much.
I mean, I grew up on a farm, right? And so like we would do slaughters and we'd kill
Yeah.
chickens, and it never really bothered me. In
Well,
fact,
I
it
think
was-
you're a
it-
little desensitized. It's one thing to kind of like
Ja, genau, das wollte ich jetzt sagen.
feel an emotion from something. But I think if you thought about it, you would probably come to the conclusion that you can't really justify it.
I
So,
don't know. Like I just don't. It doesn't bother me at all.
so
like-
Also das juckt ihn überhaupt nicht. Ja, das kann man erpressen. Ob du das einfach nur daher sagst oder ob es wirklich so ist.
Okay,
yeah, so a lot of people don't really understand what veganism is exactly.
Ich glaube, was die nicht verstehen, ist, was die dort überhaupt sagen, wenn du sagst, es interessiert mich nicht. Ich denke, das ist eine Floskel, die man einfach so raushaut. So, ja, Tiere sterben, I don't care. Ja, aber das sagst du ja nur so, das ist ja nicht wirklich deine Meinung. Das genau deswegen presst man darauf und dann findest du raus, oh doch, stimmt. Es interessiert mich doch, weil es zum Beispiel mich interessiert, wenn man meinen Hund in den Backofen steckt. Dann hätte ich ein fürchterliches Problem damit. Also ja, und der hat selbst gerade gesagt, I love animals. So, schon da haben wir ja eine fette Inkohärenz vorliegen.
Like, some people think it's just a diet. Some people, have different definitions. My definition of veganism is it is an ethical belief and way of life that
Ja, lustigerweise hat Vegan Gains meine vegane Definition.
seeks to grant animals the same rights as human beings if they were to be trade equalized.
Ja, exakt meine Definition.
So the same way we would give,
Das mit Trade Equalize, das Wichtigste eigentlich an dem ganzen Ding. Weil sonst kommst du mit dem Markus Rühl-Take, stellt die Schweine ins Gericht.
say, a mentally disabled human being, certain rights and protections under the law. They wouldn't be allowed to drive or vote, maybe necessarily, but
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to be murdered. They'd have to have a care or stuff like that. That's the same kind of idea with animals. Animals should at least have protections under the law against being murdered. Obviously, we wouldn't give them the right to vote, but you wouldn't be able to abuse, exploit them, stuff like that, like we do in the animal agriculture industry, especially with factory farming. So, what do you think about that?
My question is why? Like, what?
Why?
What is the purpose of having them get those institutional rights in a sense where they can do these things and have these?
Why? Ich würde den zurückfragen, jetzt fragt er, warum sollten die diese Rechte haben? Ich würde zurückfragen, warum sollte dein Hund diese Rechte haben? Warum kann ich nicht zu deinem Hund gehen und ihm den Kopf abschneiden? Why? Genau, why? Ne? Das ist die Frage auf dem Tisch. Und er würde sich seine eigene Frage beantworten.
These sort of privileges, when in a sense.
Und dann als nächsten Schritt, warum kann man nicht zu dir kommen und dir den Kopf abschneiden? Um das noch besser zu veranschaulichen.
They're not giving each other these, conveniences.
Wait, what? Oh mein Gott. Soll das die Rechtfertigung sein? Weil die Tiere sich diese Rechte nicht gegenseitig geben? What the fuck?
Right, well, same with mentally disabled people. They can't really necessarily reciprocate rights or responsibilities, but we still take care of them. The fundamental issue for me is I don't see a symmetry breaker between humans, animals.
Das ist ja, ich überlege gerade, also, weil die Tiere unter sich das ja auch nicht diese Gesetze haben, ja, wait. Aber die Frage ist nicht, ob die Tiere das unter sich haben, weil die Frage ist ja nicht, ob die Tiere sich gegenseitig judgen, sondern die Frage ist, wie du das judgen würdest. Das ist eigentlich nichts anderes, als dass du schon wieder deine Verantwortung auf andere abwälzt. Ja, die machen das ja auch nicht untereinander. Wait. Ich frage dich, wie du das findest, dass sie das nicht untereinander machen, zum Beispiel. Also ja, man muss immer so aufpassen bei solchen Aussagen, weil es wirklich als einziges Ziel hat, die Debatte zu verschieben.
Or say any other sentient being. I mean, there could be aliens that exist somewhere else that may be somewhere in between human and animal intelligence. I don't see a significant enough difference between humans and the animals we're eating where I would be fine with taking away the rights of animals, but not okay with taking away the rights of humans. So I would like to hear some sort of symmetry breaker from you. Like, what is the significant difference between humans and animals where it's okay to...
Ja, der hat seinen Hund erwähnt. Ich würde mit Haustier-Entity anfangen. Einfach nur, um das Eis ein bisschen zu brechen.
Take away rights from animals, but not humans.
Yeah.
Richard, if I may. This is just taking a slightly different direction on it.
So, der debattiert hier die beiden Omnis, oder was? Let's go.
So let's go with that and say.
2 Köpfe sind schlauer als einer, würde ich mal sagen. Von daher hat der Veganer keine Chance. Wahrscheinlich. So, let's go. 2 Omnis gegen 1. Ich werde Vegan Gains mal ein bisschen unterstützen. Dann rechtfertigt man Tiermord. 2 Köpfe.
that we are so enforcing a law that animals have the same rights as humans. Everything from, I don't know how far you want to take this, like an ant, or maybe like farm animals like a small chicken, all the way up to adult.
Der hat natürlich auch den besten Ton EU-Country.
Right? You enforced it that you're not allowed to kill, or in this case, we murder animals. How would you enforce that globally?
Wait, what? Ja, jetzt wird er darauf antworten wahrscheinlich. Ja.
Same way we enforce animal abuse currently. So if somebody is seen kicking their dog, they get fined, jailed, stuff like that. Their dog might be taken away from them. Basically, same set of circumstances. And wild animals do have protection under the law.
Also das kritisiere ich an Vegan Gains auch immer, dass er auf alle Fragen immer antwortet. Das sehe ich auch bei Raffaela übrigens. Nicht immer, aber auch oft. Ich weiß gar nicht, ob die... Ja doch, die ist auf Fragen antworten und damit legst du deine Props auf den Tisch. Das ist nicht gut.
There are migratory birds, for instance, where you have to stop for them.
Dann machst du nichts anderes als dich angreifbar.
Or else you get massive fines. I think it's like $15,000 in Canada if you run over a Canada goose. So same way we already regulate it now.
Okay. I mean, I can definitely understand, in working first world countries like Canada, the US, that could plausibly be enforced. But I would almost argue the whole continent of Africa and Asia, especially in
human rights don't even exist in those places. So I'm not saying...
Ja, interessant, wo Menschenrechte gelten. Interessant, oder? Die Menschenrechte gelten hier und die Menschenrechte gelten in deinem Wald und die Menschenrechte gelten in der Wüste, der Sahara. Komisch, ja? Die gelten überall.
It would probably be a good thing eventually if we had enough political interest and it was worth doing. We had plausible ability to see good outcomes to enforce human rights in these regions, right? There's places in Africa where gay people get killed. There are Muslim jihadist terrorist organizations that are genociding Christian villages and then they have to flee to Sudan. So I'm just we live in the US, Canada. I know you're in Thailand and stuff right now, but in the developed world, it's definitely something we should strive towards.
Der ist in Thailand, da müsste der aber satte Internetverbindung haben. Kauft dir mal ein neues Mikrofon, holy shit.
But back to the question,
Es hört sich so an, als hätte er sein Mikro gar nicht an. Das ist so typisch, so hört sich das an, wenn du den Ton, wenn die Webcam den Ton aufnimmt. Passiert immer wieder, sehe ich immer wieder in Debatten und Videos und Livestreams immer dieses, dann sagt ihnen das jemand, dann gucken die nach, oh ja, stimmt, what the fuck, mein Ton war ja gar nicht an. Die sitzen sogar vor dem Mikrofon und denen fällt das nicht auf.
The symmetry breaker, what's the meaningful...
Genau, stell die Frage zurück, wenn er sagt, die Tiere sollten das nicht haben, so wie Menschen, stellt sie die Frage, warum nicht?
Difference to you between humans and animals.
Die Antwort ist ja asymmetrisch. Die Frage, die immer auf dem Tisch liegt, ist warum.
That makes it okay to kill animals but not humans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the symmetry is simple to me in a sense that one of them is very intellectual, has some sort of sentience, and can actually contribute to the world. Even if you are mentally disabled, there's a certain capacity that you have in the world. There's many people who have been disabled and had really great accomplishments under their belt.
Ja, und du lässt, also das Reductio da von dieser Position von seinem letzten Punkt ist, also der hat es ein paar Trades genannt, aber diesen letzten Trade von ihm ist, die haben das Potenzial, irgendwas zu verändern. Ja, nehmen wir das Potenzial einfach raus. Und dann? Bist du dann logisch konsistent? Nein? Widerspruch.
I believe that animals simply do not have this sentience, and taking that even
ja, this sentience, ja, damit muss man arbeiten, was auch immer der damit meint. This sentience.
Step further, if let's just say there
so,
was
just to be
alien
clear,
species.
Ja, das muss er jetzt rausarbeiten.
Hold on, if there was an alien species that was highly intellectual, way more advanced than we were, the likelihood is that they might just see us as ants and crush us nonetheless.
Ja, und die Frage ist, dürfen die das aus deiner Sicht?
Because we aren't as intellectual as them.
Und weiter?
I don't even think that's wrong. Like, to be
What?
honest, now I don't think killing one another is great.
So, wir sind bei Minute 12 und er hat gesagt, wenn Aliens auf die Erde kommen, die uns weit, weit überlegen ist, dann können die uns einfach zerquetschen wie Ameisen. Und er sagt, das findet er nicht falsch.
Especially in a same species context. But I don't necessarily think, an alien species.
Da haben wir es, deswegen hat das jemand in den Kommentaren geschrieben, da haben wir es mit einer wirklich intellektuell redlichen Person zu tun. Nice. Wenn Aliens kommen, dann dürfen die auf deine Kinder drauf treten. Bis sie zermatscht sind. Bis da einfach nur ein Hackfleisch auf dem Boden ist. Okay. Cool. Erwachsener Mann. Glückwunsch.
Species of whatever type invading us and killing us is wrong. It's just their interpretation of their reality.
I think
Ja, interessant, dass du von der Moral von den Aliens redest. Nicht verstehend, dass es um deine Moral geht.
you do.
And it happens to be.
So I think you do think it's wrong. So
Ja, der hat gerade gesagt, dass es eigentlich gar nicht falsch ist, wenn die das machen würden. So, da hatten wir einen normativen Claim und ja, jetzt, ja, eigentlich ist die Debatte ab dem Punkt beendet. Man kann auch mal fragen, ob das gerade wirklich gesagt hat, aber also wie ich das in Debatten mache, wenn jemand so eine völlig hirntote Aussage macht, einfach das Entailment nochmal ausführen. Also, wie ich gerade gesagt habe, ne, also die würden deine Tochter tot trampeln, du würdest daneben stehen und sagen, das ist okay. So, das Entailment noch ausführen, dann, wenn er sagt, ja, das wäre okay, ja. Was willst du weiter mit ihm reden?
you're against the Holocaust, correct?
Okay.
Sure, but that's like species on species, same
Right,
concept.
but let's
arguing.
suppose like Hitler had this idea that there's an
Oh.
Aryan race.
Das
Hitler
was?
had this idea that there's an Aryan race.
Also,
And if you look into the lore, it in the Nazi lore, they were almost suggesting that there were like an entirely different race of humans. It's like their DNA was
Yeah.
somehow like holy or godlike. Let's say we lived in an alternate reality where that was true. The Aryan race was far superior, was far more intelligent. Would that make you accepting of the Holocaust?
No.
Yeah,
No.
so I don't think you really
Because-
care about whether or not an
es liegt ein Widerspruch vor, aber das wird er nicht ausformulieren wahrscheinlich. Und das ist das ganze Problem.
alien race is far superior to us.
But they don't care. Like, that's the
Well,
thing,
they-
right?
Die Frage ist nicht, ob die kehren. Hallo, 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 ist jemand da? Klopf, klopf, klopf. Die Frage ist, ob du kehrst. Ich hasse diese Maus.
Hey, what's up,
What's
dude?
up, man?
Verdammt.
Hey, what's up?
Weiß jemand, an welcher Stelle wir waren? Man darf die wirklich nicht berühren, ne? Das ist unglaublich.
Lore, in the Nazi lore, they were almost suggesting that there were like an entirely different race of humans. It's like their DNA was
Yeah.
somehow like holy or godlike. Let's say we lived in an alternate reality where that was true. The Aryan race was far superior, was far more intelligent. Would that make you accepting of the Holocaust?
No.
Yeah,
No.
so I don't think you really
Because-
care about whether or not an alien race is far
Hallo Madev.
superior to us.
But they don't care. Like, that's the
Well,
thing,
they
right?
wouldn't care,
There's-
but it would
there's
matter to
levels.
you.
Ja, da sagt es.
because one is a misinterpretation of another's perspective. What you're saying
Das hast du jetzt nicht wirklich gesagt, oder? Du bist derjenige, der die nicht versteht, aus welcher Perspektive argumentiert wird.
is if the Holocaust had circumstances in which would never actually exist, would it be appropriate?
Ja, was ist falsch an der Frage?
Well, I'm saying this as a human who would be doing this to other humans. No. But I think if, for example, an alien species was to invade the Earth and say, we want this planet because it has resources that we need. Oh, there's a pesky substance on this planet that is made of carbon and organic mass. Get rid of it. It's indifferent. Like, I don't think it matters. I also don't think that, harming animals to eat.
Ja, was da sagt, muss man alles unpacken. I don't think it matters. Was genau jetzt? Also wäre es dir egal oder was?
While they are the animals that we are feeding as livestock, I don't think that's a problem either, because again, disproportionately so, we have more sentience than they do, as well as we need.
Ja, wenn wir Menschen haben, also ja, man muss ja nach dem Trade fragen, der hat schon so viele Trades jetzt gebracht, man muss fragen, was ist der Trade? Ist das ein Trade-Stack oder was? Oh mein Gott. Ja, vergewaltiger Logik, so und so immer. Das Übliche.
Substance, just as they do to live.
Okay, but back to the Holocaust analogy. Like, again, if the Nazis
Frag ihn doch erstmal nach dem Trade. Was ist jetzt der wirkliche Trade?
were like a super intelligent, superior race, you still would have a problem with the Holocaust.
If they were so you're saying if they were human on human interactions?
Well, again, we could consider them to still be human, but let's say they were a superior race of humans. So their IQ.
Ja, wenn die superior sind, dann ist es ja, und man darf das nicht mit denen machen, dann ist es ja nicht superior sein.
It was better, they had better genes.
Also ist der Trait Species.
I don't think that's conducive to any cultural standpoint if they're still the same species. Well, neither would I if a
fragt dich.
Lion was to kill a lion. It's not really conducive to the success of that species. Therefore, I don't see it as
fragt dich.
appropriate. But if a human was to be killed by a superior species that is completely different and completely detached from humanoid figures, then so be it. It's what it is.
So be it.
I have no say over what they do.
Well, just because
So dürfen Tiere andere Tiere vergewaltigen?
you have just because you don't have the ability to say convince them otherwise, that doesn't mean you wouldn't have a moral position on it. So is your moral position that it's okay to eliminate?
Ja, der ist übel verwirrt, der Typ. Aber das ist so wirklich das Typische, was man bei Omnis leider sieht bei Debatten. Omnis haben ein fürchterliches Problem damit zu tracken, aus was für einer Sicht argumentiert wird. Die haben so ein fürchterlich, deswegen kommt, ja, aber in China essen sie Hunde. Ja, aber aus der Moral der Aliens. Ja, aber aus der Moral des Löwen. Alter.
Eliminate the human race as long as another species does.
Aber sowas kann man einfach am Anfang der Debatte festmachen, damit es nicht zu so einem Chaos hier kommt.
Does it?
If we can't
That it's okay to eliminate the human race as long as another species does it?
Und ich meine, die haben die übelsten Probleme damit, aus wessen Sicht das argumentiert wird. Das kann auch einfach daran liegen, weil sie die Frage dodgen wollen. Deswegen reden die ständig von der Moral von jemand anderem. Ja, aus der Sicht der Aliens, die dürften uns dann tottrampeln. Die würden uns dann tottrampeln. Ja, warte mal, das ist ja nicht die Frage. Dürfen die uns laut deiner Moral tottrampeln?
If we can't control it, yeah, what am I gonna do, right? Like,
siehst du, was soll ich tun? Hat jemand gefragt, was du tun würdest? Was du tun kannst?
Well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm not.
Dankeschön, Vegan Gains. Das ist nicht, was ich frage, sagt Vegan Gains. Herzlich willkommen.
I'm not asking if you have the power to do it. I'm asking what your moral position is.
Yep.
My moral position would be that it's indifferent. I honestly don't see a difference in the matter.
So it doesn't matter to you
happen,
whether or not the human race is
happen.
exterminated.
No, I'd play.
Ja, warum weitersprechen mit dem? Hä? Der hat es jetzt zum zweiten Mal gesagt. Die Menschheit wird ausgerottet und ihn juckt das nicht. Na, jetzt geht's hier aber los. Why würde man mit ihm weiterreden? Vielen Dank, Madev. Warum wurde das nicht im Chat angezeigt?
Play no part in it at the end of the day. If
Ja, wundervolle Debatte. Hier haben wir wieder so einen Kandidaten.
they are eliminated and morally, for me, like nothing in my
I
life.
see
will
that
change, right? It
as
exists, it doesn't
a bit of a
exist.
contradiction because you just claimed that like farming animals benefits the human race and everything, and
It
doing
does.
things that are positively affecting the human race you prefer. So how would an alien race exterminating humanity further those goals?
It's just the pyramid of hierarchy. There's no benefit to.
Ja, das ist das Typische. Bei dem ist einfach eine krankhafte Ausprägung von dieser halt Pyramide. Wer ist stärker Pyramide? Stärker sein Pyramide. Komplett kranke Ausprägung. Und ja, so lebt er sein Leben halt. Schelle links, Schelle rechts. Vielen Dank, Madev. Also, ja. Gibt es genug solche Leute, das sind wirklich auch die widerlichsten, eine der widerlichsten Menschen überhaupt. Dieses Pyramide. Wer oben steht, wer ganz oben steht, darf mit denen unter sich alles machen. Ne? Es geht nur darum, also der Stärkere gewinnt, ne? Das ist die ganze Position. Ja, und du fragst sie, wenn jemand stärker ist als die Menschen, dann darf er die Menschheit auslöschen und der sagt ja. So. Ja, wie geschrieben wurde, eine Vergewaltigerlogik. Fragst du Vergewaltiger, wie rechtfertigst du das? Sagt er, naja, ich bin stärker. Ja.
The human
Auch Sklavenlogik. Ne? Alles komischerweise basiert immer auf dieser Logik.
race. The benefit to the human
Ja, warum weiterreden mit einer Person, die gerade Ja gesagt hat?
race is that, yes, we're taking
Was für eine Zeitverschwendung.
advantage of a lower sentience being to feel.
Ja, Lower Sentience Being. Wenn das der Trade wäre, ne, kannst du bei Menschen, bei einer bestimmten, die im Rollstuhl die Sentience runtersenken auf das von Tieren und dann fragen, ob man die farmen darf. Aber weil die Aliens dürfen ja alle Menschen farmen, von daher, never mind.
Fuel and compound our own nutrition, whereas the other, whatever, say like alien species, is likely doing the same thing. What I'm saying is we're taking advantage of a sentient species that is lower than us in a certain
Lower than us. Ne, diese Ausdrucksweise schon.
capacity. They're taking advantage of the same thing. I mean, it's in my
Ja, und es läuft alles bei einem normalen Menschen, wenn man es mit einem normalen Menschen reden würde, alles auf den naturalistischen Fehlschluss hinaus. Sie sind stärker, sagt er. Ja. Aus dem, wer stärker ist, folgt nicht, dass der die Schwächere unterwerfen darf. Unglaublich, oder?
my way. It's just the kingdom come. It's just how things are. So
Ja, man kann da alle möglichen Reductus basteln. Zum Beispiel, wenn ich als Mensch stärker bin als er, darf ich ihm den Schädel einschlagen.
essentially in the wild space, you know.
Darf ich ihm mit einer Gabel die Augen rauspoken.
Yeah, but
In the
just
grand
because
dark
that's the way
forest.
things are and you wouldn't be able to control it, you would still be able to have a moral opinion.
Ja, siehst du, das versteht er nicht. Immer das gleiche Problem. Oh, es gibt eine Moralposition. Oh, wusste ich ja gar nicht. Ja, herzlich willkommen.
And so I don't know how you can say, one, I want to see
I
the
told you
benefit.
my moral opinions. I don't care. Like I just I
Well,
don't
if you
think it
don't
matters.
care, then you wouldn't care about the benefit of the human species.
Right. I don't.
Richard, to
So
add
you
another
don't care
point-
about benefiting the human species.
I genuinely care about the basics
Ja, mich wird der andere Typ mehr interessieren. Also mit dem so und so alles durch, aber was mit dem anderen?
of socially being able to control. Hold on, I have to plug in my charger. Socially being able to, as a human being,
Ja, das ist ja.
live your life, but I don't necessarily care if something so existential happened that I literally couldn't do anything about it. Like morally to me, it is what it is. If an asteroid came and hit
Ja, it is what it is, ein naturalistischer Fehlschluss. Das wird Vegan Gains wahrscheinlich nicht erklären.
the Earth, sucks, but I don't really morally have an opinion about it.
It is what it is. Zu was für einem Thema sagst du das? Hä? Man kann sich fragen, darf man vergewaltigen? Weil das ist ja. Es werden ja Menschen vergewaltigt. What the fuck? Alter, was du da für Reductus laufen lassen kannst, nach so einer Position. Ja, aber man versteht, ne?
Aber Pflanzen haben auch Gefühle.
Man versteht, spätestens jetzt an diesem Punkt versteht man, warum er ein Omni ist. Das ist halt das Ding.
It's just, it happened, right?
Mhm.
I don't see these things as any different than you accidentally stepping on a pile of ants. Shit just happens as you're walking around.
Well,
Ja, komplett deskriptive Aussage. Du trittst auf einen Ameisenhaufen drauf. Die Frage ist nicht, ob du drauf trittst. Die Frage ist, wie du es moralisch bewertest.
well,
I don't have
what
a
it-
moral opinion.
okay, let's say an alien race were to try to kill us, but we actually had the technology and ability to stop them. You would intervene and stop them, right?
Yes, but that would also be killing another species.
Well,
which
right,
would be
but
against
they're
your morals.
violating your rights.
Sure.
So
if I
then
had
you
the
do have an
capacity
interest in
to,
humans.
Ja, aber die Frage von Vegan Gains, aber ja, warum stellt man die? Würdest du dich verteidigen, wenn du dich verteidigen könntest? Ja, aber das ist ja gar nicht die Frage. Das ist nicht die Frage, ob du dich verteidigen würdest. Die Frage ist, wie du es moralisch bewertest.
Existing.
Also klar, mit dieser Frage kann ihn einen weiteren Widerspruch reindrücken, aber ja, wozu?
I mean, if I was to sit idle and let myself die, that would be a different situation. So if you're asking me if I can fight back and I have the tools to fight back, I would fight back, as I'm sure animals would, but they don't.
Ja, they don't. Die können nicht. Das ist wie dich festzubinden und langsam aufzuschlitzen. Kannst dich nicht wehren. Und die Frage ist nicht, ob du dich wehren würdest. Die Frage ist, wie du es moralisch findest, wenn das jemand bei dir macht. Es ist unfassbar.
Right, that's because they don't have the ability to.
Ja, gut. Ich rede jetzt mir Vegan Gains nach dem Mund, Lul.
But
As we wouldn't
again,
have the ability
the fact
Ja, alles darf man nach dieser Logik. Das kannst du gar nicht ausmalen, was der Typ macht. Alter.
that you'd fight
Ich
back
versteht gar nicht, was er dort sagt.
shows that you have a preference against humanity being destroyed. So I still see that as a contradiction. That one,
Du musst dir vorstellen, es ist so ein unglaubliches Zeichen einfach, ne, warum Menschen Omnis sind. Du redest mit so einem und du verstehst, warum Menschen Omnis sind. Der ist intellektuell einfach überhaupt nicht in der Lage zu verstehen, was zum Henker der dort sagt.
you don't care that the human
Man ist stärker und das war's. Ihn interessiert nichts, ihn interessieren keine Rechte, ihn interessiert kein Leid, anscheinend gar nichts interessiert ihn.
race would be exterminated. But two, you want to exist yourself and you want the human race to exist. So
Ja, wenn du selbst leben willst, glaubst du, dein Nachbar will leben?
that's a contradiction.
So, wenn dein Nachbar leben will und du leben willst, glaubst du, alle Menschen wollen leben? So, wenn alle leben wollen, genauso wie du, warum sagst du dann, es ist okay, wenn Aliens uns zertreten?
So
Oh mein
clearly
Gott.
you would think it's morally wrong for an alien species
Was für ein abgefucktes Moralsystem Menschen haben können, das ist unglaublich. Anstatt ein intellektuell redlicher, guter Mensch zu sein, ne, guter Mensch auch so ein Thema, worauf man den pressen könnte, den zu fragen, bist du ein schlechter Mensch? Wenn er sagt nein, wow, dann kannst du ordentlich Reductus laufen lassen an der Position. So, ja.
to come to Earth and exterminate us.
A human species to come to Earth?
Sorry, an alien. Did I say human? I meant
Was für eine Rolle spielt die Spezies, Junge? Gott.
an alien.
Dich kehren irgendwelche DNA-Moleküle wirklich.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't see that as wrong. Adam, you were going to say
Well,
something?
you clearly do. You
Yeah.
fight against them.
Yeah, just one position I'll be interested
Ja, aber er muss nicht aus moralischen Gründen. Er kann ja nur dagegen kämpfen, weil er irgendwie keine Schmerzen erleiden will oder sowas. Also ich weiß nicht, kann es irgendwelche anderen Gründe geben?
in, Richard. What do you think about animals eating and killing other animals?
Yeah, I think it's
How does
wrong.
that fit into that? You think it's wrong, so animals should be vegan too?
Ja, it's wrong. Es ist wrong auch nach deinem Moralsystem, wenn man dich mal drauf pressen würde.
Yep. My cats are vegan. Well, they eat a vegan diet. My dogs eat a vegan diet.
What do you think about like an animal which is, historically always been a carnivore? Let's say a lion.
Naturalistischer Fehlschluss.
Yep. If I had a pet lion, I'd feed it a vegan diet.
Ja, darf man dich einem Laien verfüttern? Nein. Oh, aber ein Zebra, nennt man den Eigenschaftsunterschied. Ich bin aber kein Zebra. Ich weiß. Das war nicht die Frage. Habe ich dich gefragt, ob du ein Zebra bist? Und so fängt dann die Debatte an.
Okay, now I don't know enough about animal biology. I'm not a zoologist to say
Was für eine Rolle spielt Biologie für Moral? Sagen wir, die können nur Fleisch essen und? Bist du dafür, dass Vampire uns fressen? Die können nichts anderes fressen.
whether certain animals can live.
Ja, man merkt, die zwei haben mit Logik und Ethik nichts zu tun. Die haben sowas alles noch nicht gehört. Da war ich auch gerade völlig erstaunt, so wie Tiere dürfen andere Tiere nicht essen. Also ja, die sind halt unwissend.
On a vegetarian diet.
Weil ich werde einfach die Reductus laufen lassen und ihn ja auflaufen lassen.
I don't know.
Weil so lernt er am allerbesten, dass sein Moralsystem in der Live-Debatte auseinanderfliegt. Und es kann Besseres passieren.
But from my understanding, given they've evolved over X amount of thousands or hundreds of years to eat
Ja, und weil sie das so lange machen, deswegen dürfen die das. Weißt du, was lange gemacht wird? Seit der Existenz des Menschen vergewaltigen. Ist das deswegen richtig?
A carnivorous
Appeal to Tradition, ne? Gefrühstückt.
diet, and let's say the case for lion.
Ja, und daran erkennst du auch, auf welchem Level die Menschen sind, was Logik angeht, wenn der in einer Minute schon das halbe Bullshit-Bingo durch hat, ne?
I don't know if that would be biologically feasible for them.
No, it
That's
would.
something
Das ist das Traurige, wie Menschen alle so rumlaufen draußen, ne? Und Moralsysteme haben, die nach einer Minute auseinanderfliegen würden, wenn man mal drauf drücken würde. Genau wie damals die Menschen, die pro Sklaverei waren, als es noch erlaubt war. Alle laufen rum, alle alten Sklaven. Und ja, irgendwelche Menschen klopfen an und sagen, hey, glaubst du, es gibt ein Problem damit?
So my oldest cat, I think, is around 4 years old now. He's been on a vegan diet ever since I got him as a kitten when he was about 8 weeks. The only thing they need is nutrition, right? So it doesn't really matter what the source comes from. And especially now, like plants don't produce taurine, but you can artificially add taurine to food. So,
But is a lion going to be able to artificially add taurine to his food?
well, not a wild lion, but we'd be able to do it for them.
But then how would that work? So would we have to like put every wild animal in captivity and then over hundreds of years feed them vegetarian diets to change?
Schon wieder schon, dass er diese Frage stellt, die so komplett am Thema vorbei ist. Wie würden wir das umsetzen? Why redet man über die Umsetzung? Why bewertest du das nicht moralisch? Well, dir sind die Entailments wichtig, ja, dann stelle ich die Frage im Vakuum.
Change their natural instinct to not hunt and kill each other.
Well,
Then eventually get the
ideally, we would have the technology to, say, engineer environments and ecosystems so that animals don't have to kill each other. So that would mean manipulating the genes of certain animals, changing the flora and fauna,
Eugenics.
stuff like that.
Look, Richard, I can appreciate the ethical point you're trying to make. I just think what you're saying in practice is so impractical for the current and even future state of the world. Like you said it yourself.
Well, I don't think
People
it's
in Africa don't have
impractical.
rights.
I don't think it's impractical
Ja, presst den mal.
at all. And I actually think if the world were to switch to a completely vegan food system, it would benefit humanity. Most zoonotic diseases, well, by definition, all zoonotic diseases come from animals. So
Ja, alle Zoonosen, die es gibt, kommen von Tieren.
the latest COVID pandemic
Corona, die Pest, Grippevirus, Rindervirus, alles. Rinderwahnsinn, alles.
outbreak that killed roughly 7 million people worldwide, that came
Ja, WHO sagt, 13 Millionen sind gestorben.
from the wet markets in China, the Spanish flu, which really should have been probably called the Chinese flu, because most evidence suggests that it came from China. That killed 50 million people worldwide. That originated from waterfowl, and that getting transmitted to chickens, and then us eating chickens, and then getting that disease. HIV, that came from people eating bush
Ja, stimmt. HIV sogar.
meat, chimpanzees.
Ja, weil Menschen Affen gegessen haben.
Ebola, that came from
Ebola.
close proximity to bats, and people might have actually been eating the bats. Along with polio, smallpox, all these horrible diseases came from animals, and that's not to mention just infectious disease outbreaks from the food industry. So like E. coli, listeria, I can name a number of diseases.
Ja.
So do you think a world with less pandemic disease would be a better world?
Übel komplizierte Frage.
That's
Of course,
a
I guess-
general question, of
Da würde ich mich erstmal, bevor ich antworte, am Kopf kratzen.
course, yes, but
Yeah,
that doesn't
so-
have anything to do with the relation of this, honestly.
And also my
Well, it
point was
does.
just
All
that
these
us
diseases originate from, animal product consumption. So if we didn't have
They
animal
might
product
originate,
consumption,
but they aren't propagated. They don't continue because of animal
no, they do.
consumption.
No, they do.
Continue because of
New strains,
inadequacies within
new
the
strains of
human
flu.
ability to tolerate the disease prevention. Like there's just not rules in place in certain places where this might happen,
Well,
in
look,
which there is sterilization of environments.
if nobody ever ate bushmeat, never ate chimpanzees, HIV probably never ever would have spread to human beings. We would have a world without HIV. Well, look, there could have been some weird circumstances where somebody had sex with a chimpanzee, but probably unlikely. But again, we probably never would have had HIV if people weren't eating wild animal meat.
Und dann sagt der Typ, do you know that? Alter.
If we had never started domesticating waterfowl, we probably never would have had the flu, and that's killed hundreds of millions of people.
You're saying a lot of probablys, though, and this is kind of the issue is like,
well, there's
nothing able to be founded, you know, and it's like there's ways, sure, but what are those ways? Like, how would you take humans out of the equation? How do we impact lions stopping the eating of meat? Who's going to feed them fucking taurine?
Well, again, I'm really more concerned with what we can do personally.
Ja, lass dich doch nicht auf diesen Scheiß ein.
I don't know if we're gonna really be able to.
But why do we need to be invading other species, habitats, and especially their
invading, genau. Weil natürlich das, was die Tiere machen, das ist richtig, ne? Wir sollten die in Ruhe lassen. Um Gottes Willen.
Okay, well, if you have a problem.
Ja, sollten wir die Tiere in Ruhe lassen, wenn sie Menschen fressen.
Problem with invading species habitats, the number one cause of deforestation and habitat loss is the animal products industry. So if you have a problem with that, then you should be in favor with ending the animal products industry.
It's estimated that agricultural processes kill like 7.3 billion animals.
Most of that comes from the animal products industry. So that's directly from the space needed by the animals, and that's also the space needed for the food they eat. Animals eat way more than us. A cow that gets to like 2,000 pounds has to eat way more food than you, and you're talking about a lot of corn and soybeans needing to be fed to these cows in order to get them to a weight where they can be slaughtered. So that's what's accounting for all of this habitat destruction. So if you're against...
Deswegen, was er gerade erklärt hat, deswegen würden, wenn alle Menschen vegan leben würden, 75% der Agrarflächen frei werden.
Encroaching into wild habitats and, destroying, all these forests, rainforests.
Ja, ich hoffe so sehr, dass wir irgendwann eine gute Debatte sehen. Mit irgendeiner, vielleicht Frau. Weil bei Frauen, die sind nicht so auf einem Ego-Trip wie der Typ da. Die sind da zugänglicher. Und ja, die einfach ehrlich ist, die irgendwas sagt, irgendein Trade sagt, der ihr gerade einfällt, und dann lässt Vegan Gains das Reducto laufen und sagt, ja stimmt, okay, ne, die Position verwerfe ich, das ist natürlich, dieser Trade ist natürlich Unsinn. Es liegt Special Pleading vor, ich muss einen neuen Trade finden. Ja, ich hoffe das so sehr, dass wir irgendwann so eine Debatte finden.
Or stuff like that, then you should support a vegan diet, and not only for yourself, but for the planet.
Have you ever been on like a real farm?
I have.
Oh Gott. Jetzt kommen die, warst du denn schon mal auf einem Bauernhof? Wenn du nicht auf dem Bauernhof warst, wie kannst du dann mitreden? Oh mein Gott. A real farm, Dickerchen. A real farm. Alter, wenn du auf keiner Farm warst, kannst du gar nicht mitreden. Du Veganer.
Have you?
Was ist eine real farm?
Like actually, like a real farm with cattle and pigs and chicken.
Wenn ich weiß, wie Tiere abgemurkst wurden, wenn du das nicht selbst mal gemacht hast, dann kannst du darüber nichts wissen. Wenn du nicht mal selbst geraucht hast, kannst du nicht über das Rauchen reden. Ob es richtig, falsch, gesund, ungesund ist, kannst du nicht reden. Kann nur jemand, der raucht. So, ganz zu schweigen von Sachen wie Sklaven halten oder sowas. Also davon wollen wir lieber gar nicht anfangen, da dieselbe Logik in sowas zu benutzen, ne? Weil Inkohärenz ist key.
Yeah, I have, and there's actually quite a few dairy farms around where I live.
Yeah. Richard, I have to agree with you. Like, for example, I do think...
Was war daran jetzt so lustig?
Certain factory farming is unethical and terrible. The conditions the animal kept in. But I think the point Kolton is about to make, or is making, is I do think there's a degree in the sense that if you are farming just like animals in their natural habitat are eating each other, which has evolved over thousands of years without any human interaction.
Ja, der hat auch so ein fürchterliches Problem mit Appeal to Tradition und naturalistischer Fehlschluss. Mit diesen 2 Fehlschlüssen hat er fürchterliche Probleme, dieser Typ. Vegan Gains, please. Bring den diese Basics bei, please. Der mit seiner Evolution, davor hat er die ganze Zeit gelabert von weil so lange und so. Oh mein Gott, Leute, ey.
Okay, because I don't think humans are the ones getting lions and other animals to eat
Würde ich gerne mit dem Typen reden, ey.
each other. That was a natural, call it evolution, as part of their DNA.
Evolution. Ist Evolution eine Rechtfertigung für Unmoralisches? Alter.
Okay, I don't think
Xenomorph sind evolutionary so gemacht, dass sie sich nur von Menschen ernähren können. Sollten wir die Aliens rumlaufen lassen, die Xenomorphen?
that's more of a ethical debate. I think that's just more of a biological debate. I don't think they
Biological Debate, wirklich.
developed that way because of ethics. I think they
Ja, genau das, was du gerade sagst. Steht Biologie über Ethik? Wirklich? Soll ich mal drauf pressen?
developed that
Well,
way
no,
because of biology.
they certainly didn't develop that way because of ethics, but I'm ethically minded, so
Ja, und auch wenn die nach Ethics sich so halt evolutionär so geworden sind, wen juckt's? Du wirst gefragt.
I don't really
Immer das gleiche Problem.
care necessarily about somebody's biology.
Right, we're talking not about people, we're talking about animals here. And what I'm saying is, I don't think you can enforce your ethic.
Also ich finde es einfach nur erschreckend, wirklich Menschen mit so einem niedrigen Intellekt zu sehen, einfach. Diese so wirklich so richtig einfach nur Holzköpfe. Wie kann man das anders sagen? Also, dass sie so durchs Leben laufen. So ein Moralsystem, das wirklich auf einem Streichholz draufsteht. Das Moralsystem ist ein Haus und das steht auf einem Streichholz drauf. Und das Streichholz ist ihr Moralsystem, ihre Rechtfertigung. Wenn da noch ein Windhauch dagegen presst, fliegen die auseinander. Der da links natürlich nicht, der ist natürlich logisch konsistent. Ne? Bei dem ist einfach Gigi Nore. Aber bei dem Typen, Alter.
On an animal, there's no concept of ethics, but rather
Ja und?
We
Soll das eine Rechtfertigung sein? Sollen wir das mal überprüfen?
absolutely can. We force our ethics on animals all the time. If a dog, like a pit bull, goes out and rips apart a kid, we put him down.
Sure, you talk.
Ja, ich glaube, der Typ hier, der rechts, der ist auch viel zugänglicher. Ich habe das Gefühl, der würde Fehler zugeben, anstatt wie der andere da.
Or you could talk about a domesticated animal. We're not talking about an animal.
We do that with wild animals.
Oh mein Gott, nenn den Eigenschaftsunterschied zwischen Haustieren und Nutztieren.
If bears come and attack people, we kill them. When gators come and attack people, we kill them. So we absolutely, force our moral principles on wild animals all the time. And again, number one cause of habitat destruction is animal agriculture. So that is also a way in which you're forcing your values on these animals. And again, you're forcing your values on the domesticated animals. They don't want to die, but you kill them anyway.
When you talk about like a bear, for example, and someone killing them, I don't think that's us enforcing our ethics. That's just us being, the superior race defending ourselves. For example, if
That's
a bear
forcing your ethical values. You have an ethical value to protect human beings. The bear doesn't care. You force your values on that bear.
I don't think
So let's say you're on the receiving end of that, bro.
ethical.
Ja, warte doch, Alter. Jetzt stellt der andere Fragen. Warte doch. Press den doch erstmal zu Ende.
I'm just curious, like,
Das ist dann noch so ein Punkt, warum ich nie im Leben eine Dreierdebatte machen würde. Schon allein aus diesem Grund. Da krieg ich einen Tobsuchtsanfälle bei sowas. Ja, was ist jetzt mit dem Punkt? Einfach weg.
yeah, what part of that is ethical? So let's say you're
Super.
on the receiving end, you're standing in the forest and the bear's coming at you. What do you do?
Ja, den Bären erschießen und weiter.
Oh, I'd kill the bear. Yeah, it's self-defense.
Right.
So, okay. Ich habe gerade gesagt, ich werde den Bären erschießen. Und jetzt ist was? Ich bin kein Veganer mehr. Ihr könnt eine Reductio laufen lassen. Cool, ich warte.
That more it's more self-preservation and self-defense rather than
No, it's self-defense. If I didn't have an interest in
Cool, keiner bringt irgendeinen Konter dagegen. Cool. Dann können wir weitermachen.
living and I was suicidal, I'd let the bear kill me, but
Ihr kennt das aus Debatten, das ist das typische Ich hab dich, Veganer. Und dieser Gotcha-Moment. Was würdest du machen? Würdest du einen Bären erschießen etwa? Ja, würde ich. Dann denken die haben einen. Ja, ihr habt was? Ihr habt was? Genau, dann stillschweigend. Ja. Ja. Applaus.
have an interest in living.
Mhm.
So it's
But
just
isn't that just more
self-defense.
Das Schweigen ist laut. Sehr gut.
self-preservation than an ethical
Well, same
argument?
thing. I don't see a big difference between self-preservation and self-defense.
Sure, is it what we're saying is in self-defense and self-preservation not an ethical question, more like a biological question? You have a will to live.
What? What? Alles ist ethical question. Ja, natürlich ist das eine ethical question. What the fuck?
Well, I wouldn't say everybody has a will to live. I don't know
Sure.
if every single species, like I don't think plants have a will to live, but they, have some level of
Und jetzt zweifelt das am besten noch an, dann können wir den Laden dicht machen für heute.
intelligence where they make sure they keep on living. But
Weil das würde ich dem Linken zutrauen.
for me personally, I have an interest in living. So if a bear
Sowas wie, are you sure plants don't have feelings oder sowas? Würde ich ihm absolut zutrauen.
attacked me
Also wenn man so mental abgereist ist, da kann alles kommen.
and I had a 44 Magnum, yeah,
Ich meine, Gerald Groß hat gesagt, Steine haben Seelen. So, öffentlich im Fernsehen.
I'd shoot the bear.
What about plants which develop?
Ja, cool. Also, wir haben alle festgestellt, alle, die das jetzt gucken und auf YouTube gucken werden, wir haben alle festgestellt, da oben links hat die Frage gestellt, die Gotcha-Frage, was würdest du tun, wenn ein Bär auf dich zukommt? Würdest du den töten? Dann hat er gesagt, ja, würde ich. Und dann kam Stillschweigen und jetzt sind wir beim nächsten Thema. Cool.
Mechanisms, whether it be like thorns or some sort of venomous part of them to preserve themselves. Does that mean that they have a interest in living and therefore it's an ethical issue?
No. So they're not sentient. Just because like plants have defense mechanisms, that doesn't mean they consciously interpret a threat, say, oh God, I want to live. I'm going to grow thorns. Oh, thank God the thorns protected me. No, like bacteria, they can form biofilms to protect themselves from antibodies. Doesn't mean the bacteria are actually conscious and thinking, oh God, I have to protect myself. I'll develop this biofilm so the antibody doesn't kill me. So I only care about sentient beings, just because like plants are living. Doesn't mean
What do you
I have
define as sentience, though? That's also a really good
So
question. because
sentience
plants do
is defined
communicate.
as the ability to have a subjective experience.
Okay, and that plants can't have a subjective experience.
Here we go. Here we go. Was habe ich euch gesagt?
Sei still.
Was habe ich euch gesagt? Da stellt er die Frage, du bist dir sicher, dass Pflanzen nicht sentient sind? Alter.
Correct.
How is that?
How is that? Übrigens habe ich meine Debatte immer noch nicht hochgeladen. Die einzige Person, die sich eine Debatte gestellt hat, nachdem ich in den YouTube-Kommentaren sie gefragt habe, die einzige von den 600, die ich gefragt habe, eine hat sich ja tatsächlich gestellt. Ja, sowas gibt es tatsächlich. Die Debatte, der hat mich dann ja gepresst mit dem Pflanzen, ne? Und ja, die Debatte ist immer noch nicht online übrigens. Die war übel lang. Die 48 Minuten oder sowas geht die. Ja, wird lustig.
Well, again, we can make a series of inferences, and with a extremely high level of probability, we can conclude that plants are not sentient. So they don't have a brain, nervous system, nociception.
Wenn du sagst, Plants sind sentient, hast du den Burden of Proof.
All things
Die Frage ist, wer sentient ist, nicht wer nicht sentient ist.
that appear to be required in order to have a conscious experience, since all other organisms that have a conscious experience have those little bits and pieces,
So
Ich muss jetzt zum Beispiel nicht beweisen, warum dieses Glas nicht sentient ist. Wenn du sagst, dieses Glas ist sentient, hast du den Burden of Proof für den Positive Claim.
being sentient basically means that you have the ability to like make decisions.
No. You could be sentient and not be able to make any decisions. We could live in a deterministic universe. The ability for us to make decisions might be an illusion, and we're basically running as machines with a predetermined path. But we know we are sentient and conscious and can experience.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. I'll be honest, man. It's not even.
You mentioned earlier, you have dogs. You don't like seeing animals getting abused. I mean, what is the big difference between your dogs and, say, like a cow or a pig at a farm getting its throat slit open? Like, you wouldn't want to see that happen to a dog, right?
Not my dog, right?
Well,
like in some places, that's going to happen.
Here we go. Das ist die Antwort, die du jedes Mal von einem Omni kriegst. Jedes verdammte Mal. Sobald du mit Haustier-Entität kommst. Ist es okay, Haustiere zu essen, zum Beispiel Hunde? Was sie immer sagen ist, in China essen sie Hunde. Wer zum Teufel hat dich das gefragt?
Not my dog, right?
Well,
like in some places, that's going to happen regardless of me being there.
If you had the power to stop all dogs from getting killed and eaten, wouldn't you enforce that power?
No.
Really?
Vegan Gains wundert sich, dass er beim Haustier-NTT in die Bullet beißt, dass man Haustiere essen darf. Also laut ihm darfst du Hunde und Katzen in den Backofen stecken. So, der hat gesagt, man darf Menschen, die dürfen Menschen auf die Menschen drauftreten, wenn die wollen, die Aliens. So, was wunderst du dich da, dass er bei Haustieren in den sauren Apfel beißt?
So you're fine with...
Er beitet jede Bullet einfach, das war's. Der hat keinerlei Interesse, ein guter Mensch zu sein, intellektuell redlich zu sein oder sonst was. Null Interesse einfach daran. Der sagt einfach, wir stehen ganz oben in der Pyramide und alles andere interessiert mich nicht. So, ein schlechter Mensch, wie er im Buche steht.
With like
because
the Yingling Dog Festival.
I am control of my space. I don't want to have to input myself in other people's situations. If they choose to eat dogs, that is completely up to them.
Yep. Das argumentiert er wieder aus der Moral von anderen Menschen heraus. Super.
I'll let them do their thing.
Okay.
I'm not going to be a part of it, and I'm not going to associate with it.
Okay, but if you had the power to stop it, like literally with your mind, let's say you had godlike powers, you wouldn't stop it?
I don't want to intervene into people's lives because
Boah, Alter. Was für eine Teufelsaussage. Nicht mal, wenn er Gott wäre. Er will sich nicht in die Entscheidungen anderer Menschen einmischen. Nicht mal, wenn er Gott wäre. So, du würdest Kindervergewaltiger machen lassen?
I selfishly have an opinion that they might not share.
Okay, so what if somebody had an opinion that they like abusing animals? They like kicking the shit out of their dog, ripping its skin off while it's fully conscious. You wouldn't intervene in that?
It is one of the human rights to have freedom of thought. So I would believe.
I think there's a difference between just abusing an animal because you're an asshole and eating an animal because that is your form of sustenance where you live.
Was ist schlimmer, einen Hund zu treten oder dem Hund den Kopf abzuschneiden? Einstein.
Take, some nomadic culture living in the desert, which is very arid, where there's not much vegetation.
Also ich würde lieber es haben, dass mich jemand tritt, meinetwegen 10-mal auf den Boden mit voller Kraft, anstatt dass er mir den Kopf abschneidet. Ich bin für Treten.
For them to eat, and these people eat all sorts of fauna, around them.
Und der, was der halt impliziert mit seiner Aussage ist, dass es ja eigentlich schlimmer ist, wenn man ein Tier tritt, anstatt es zu ermorden und aufzufressen. So, ja, auch da kannst du solche Reductos laufen lassen an seiner Position. Das ist alles, was diese zwei hier sagen, ist sowas von so unfassbar leicht anzugreifen und zu widerlegen. Aber ja, ihr seht den Debattierstil von Vegan Gains einfach, ne? Dieses nicht zu Ende pressen, dieses kurz mal ein Reductio vorbringen, aber niemals den Gegner so wirklich widerlegen. so wie ich das mache, dass der wirklich sagt, okay, ich wurde widerlegt, okay, das war ein Widerspruch, okay, ich halte diese Position nicht. Es ist, ich weiß nicht, warum man nicht zu Ende pressen würde. Das sickert doch so viel besser ein, Mann, wenn man zu Ende presst. Wenn du nicht weitermachst, bevor du ihm nicht sagst, bevor er nicht zugibt, dass er falsch liegt.
Situation like that, I would not, you know, as terrible as it is, because we domesticate animals like dogs and things like that. If there were wild dogs and that was their main food source, then that's for them to eat it, because that's what they.
Ja, und schon wieder komplett am Thema vorbei. Die Frage ist, wie du es moralisch findest.
Well, that's not the situation you're in, though. You could live perfectly comfortably, get all the nutrition you need from just eating plants. So for you personally, why would you want to contribute to animal abuse? Like, again, if you don't like seeing dogs or cats or anyone's pets get abused, like, and we're not just talking about like kicking. These animals get their throats slit open, and oftentimes a lot of countries
Ja, und was ist schlimmer?
don't use stunning methods, or even in like the United States.
Oh ja, dann am besten aber die werden artgerecht geschlachtet. Am besten jetzt noch damit ankommen.
Some of the stunning methods are
Wie könnte das nicht gleich kommen?
horrific. They literally go into CO2 gas chambers where their lungs are burnt from the inside out. So they suffer horribly before they die. Why would you want to support that? Like, you could just eat totally plant-based and be healthy, happy, live your life.
I wouldn't be happy.
I think you would be.
I
I think we spoke about where if you have the means to financially, we do say support farmers who have quote unquote, you're going to disagree with
regenerative
ethical ways of
Was habe ich gerade gesagt? Here we go.
farming if you can think that's possible, where I do
Irgendwann hast du so viele Menschen debattiert und so viele Debatten gehört, dass du nach den ersten 2, 3 Worten weißt, was der Omni gleich als Rechtfertigung bringen wird. Du kennst schon die ganzen Entailments.
I do think factory farming not only, you know, creates a poor environment for the animals, but I also think on some level is unethical too. And if you have the means to, you know, hunt and kill your own food, go for it. If you can support farmers or
Go for it. Wenn du dein eigenes Essen töten kannst und essen kannst, dann go for it, ja. Darf man dich töten und essen? Weil kann man auch. Also man kann es physisch. Es gibt Menschen, die stärker sind als du.
provide meat that way, I think that is a much better
Und auf einmal würde es heißen, dass es ist nicht okay, auch wenn man es kann. Genau, aus kann folgt nicht sollte. Right. Herzlich willkommen in der Welt der Logik.
way of doing things. I think agreed.
Well, 95% of animals in the US are factory farmed, and there's a lottery system when it comes to hunting. So even if you're an avid hunter, there could be multiple seasons where you're not even able to do any hunting. So that kind of solution is completely impractical. So there's just no way to live your life without supporting factory farming. Sorry?
Well, this is my point. If we could live in a society, just like you say, I want all wild animals to be vegan, and I'm saying that's impractical. Now, here I am saying it would be great if we lived in a world where hunting and killing animals in a more humane manner, not factory farming, was ideal. If I could enforce that, if I click my fingers right now and get rid of
there's an even better alternative. Nobody kills anyone, and we can just eat plants and live happily, be jacked as fuck with 20-inch fucking guns right here, benching 410 pounds.
And for the record, I do think we can build muscle on a vegan diet. Obviously, I do think you can bodybuild it.
Ja, wir haben Studien dazu, das vergleicht, ob man genauso Muskeln aufbauen kann mit Veganern wie mit Omni. Zum Glück haben wir zig Studien dazu, alle in meinem Studiendokument verlinkt.
Vegan diet. I do think it's more difficult, but I do think
Man nimmt Menschen und man füttert der einen Gruppe 50 Gramm, 100 Gramm tierisches Protein, der anderen Gruppe 100 Gramm pflanzliches Protein und guckt, wie der Muskelaufbau voranschreitet. Macht da irgendeine Washout-Phase, macht eine Cross-Sectional Study, wo man die Gruppen switcht, was auch immer. Alles möglich.
that's all possible. So just putting it out there, everyone thinks you can't.
Well, if it's possible, why don't you do it? I mean, like, again, we're all against
Genau, was ist deine Rechtfertigung? Hier der Kandidat rechts.
animal abuse here. We don't want to see
Aber
animal
ich meine, der hat schon so und so jede Fallacy gebracht, die das Bullshit-Bingo hergibt, von daher.
get kicked around. We don't want them
Aber siehst du, das ist genau das Problem, wenn man nicht zu Ende gepresst wird. Der weiß nicht, dass er widerlegt wurde. Genau das ist das verdammte Problem.
to be abused, kept in tiny spaces, get their throat slit open.
Hauptsache, ihr macht niemals diesen Fehler.
You can choose to just eat plants. So why don't you?
I don't choose to do that. It's not enjoyable.
Ja, warum kriegt man den da oben nicht raus? Was willst du mit jemandem, der in das Menschenreduktio reinbeißt?
I don't prefer it. I like a big fat steak, and if I had to slit a
Ja, genau deswegen.
cow's neck open to eat a steak, I
Here we go.
probably would do it.
Well, I mean,
I think if
again, this, like, the way you justify that is what, well, I'm fine with aliens just destroying
Balls im Chat.
the whole human
Yeah.
Bullshits.
race. So,
No.
again, if you're ethically minded, that's clearly, not justifiable. If you have to go to the extent of saying, yeah, I'm fine with the entire human race getting exterminated.
How does that make
Ja, und deswegen, warum weiterreden mit ihm?
me not ethically minded, though? I'm curious.
Well, again, you're fine with the entire human race getting exterminated to justify eating meat. So I don't think
If
you're
I have
particularly ethically
absolutely
minded.
zero control and ability to defend myself,
Weil es schon wieder das gleiche, was wir gerade hatten.
why even make any difference on it or inference in my own mind about it?
Well, again,
It's
somebody
out of my
who's
control.
severely
Und der fragt nach, warum das falsch ist.
disabled wouldn't be able to defend an attacker who's trying to rape them or murder them. That doesn't make that, action ethical. So just because there is an alien species that would fuck us up just like we could fuck up somebody in a wheelchair, that doesn't make it ethical.
Sure. But they're also human. They're the same species of like species, right? And
Ja, und auch das mit Spezies bei dem, ne, komplett auf einem völlig kranken Level verankert. Der kann da nicht loslassen. Für den sind DNA-Moleküle relevant.
I think that's the
Omni halt.
big difference.
And also, I think it's the difference between raping someone and wanting to eat someone for sustenance.
Yeah.
I don't see a significant difference because you
Welpenentität, der hat schon alle Entitäts reingebissen. Schau, macht alles keinen Sinn mehr.
acknowledged that
Den rechts da, den müsste man noch pressen.
you can get all the nutrition you need on
Die
a
sind beide halt argumentativ extrem schwach. Also der links beißt einfach in alle Reductios, aber der rechts, der ist extrem schwach.
plant-based diet. So you're not doing it just for sustenance, you're doing it for pleasure. Just like how
Well-
people commit rape for pleasure. So there's
Ja, der hat seinen Hund lieb, aber der hat gesagt, nur seinen Hund, nicht andere Hunde.
no significant difference there.
Also man darf Hunde in den Backofen stecken.
I said you can build muscle. How efficiently you can do that with animal products? Well, I think that is a debate there. I mean,
No, so there have been a few recent randomized trials that have come out. One was a clinical trial, not randomized, but they found that there was no difference in muscle growth, body composition, or strength increases between plant protein and animal protein. And again,
interesting. I agree there.
don't mean to brag, but I'm fairly jacked. I can bench 410 pounds, 20-inch guns. Most people
Also darf man auch Babys in den Backofen stecken, yes.
can't really achieve those numbers. So if
Man darf dann andere unterwerfen und alles mit denen machen, sobald man über ihnen steht. Das ist das Moralsystem von dem da links.
the plant-based diet was holding me back,
Richard,
unless
you
I
can
just
be
have
very
horse
genetically
genetics.
gifted.
Mann, das hält man ja im Kopf nicht aus.
Ja, ihn interessiert nur die Hierarchie. Ansonsten gar nichts.
And I think
Yeah.
you do have horse genetics, You could be the vegan Ronnie Coleman for all we know.
Maybe.
Like there's people who do run androgens, lots of them do run copious amounts of growth hormone and insulin and still aren't able to achieve
Yeah.
those kind of
Horrible.
numbers, right? It's not that you are doing this by the vegan diet, it's that you have a selection bias because you are genetically in a position to be able to do those things. You have some sort of propensity towards strength gains and muscle gains, which is a great thing, and I'm not saying
the
that
point,
you're.
I understand. The point I'm trying to make, though, is like you're not going to die if you go vegan. Clearly, it can support muscle growth and strength, and if it was really bad for you, probably wouldn't be able to hit those numbers. But again, according to the data, there doesn't seem to be a difference between plant and animal sources of protein when it comes to body composition changes and strength increases.
I would say that there's also an equivalent amount of data that says just the opposite. I think there's a lot of
Lol, was?
confounding and conflicting data. Yes,
So
really. Like if we were
Kannst du eine zeigen?
There is
pull up
older
all the
research.
articles.
So yeah, there is older research. The problem with that research is they didn't control protein intake, and they also didn't manage branched chain amino acid intake. So there were massive differences in total protein intake.
Ja, hä? Ja, ach so, ja klar. Natürlich bezieht sich der Omni auf irgendwelche alten Studien. Natürlich habe ich von denen noch nie gehört, weil es nicht darum geht, um gleiche Proteinmenge, sondern da sind Veganer und da sind Omnis und wer baut mehr Muskeln auf? Der ganze Witz an den Studien ist, warum die gezeigt haben, dass Omnis mehr Muskeln aufbauen, ist, dass Omnis doppelt so viel Protein gegessen haben. Herzlichen Glückwunsch. Du hast das Geheimnis des Universums gelüftet.
And also just branched chain aminos. So if you have a vegan or vegan diet group consuming far less protein total and their branched chain amino acid content is way lower, you're probably going to see a difference. But again, the more recent clinical trials and randomized trials show.
Am besten vergleichst du Männer, die 1200 Kalorien am Tag essen und 60 Gramm Protein mit Männern, die 3000 Kalorien essen und 250 Gramm Protein. Sehr, sehr sinnvoll. Einfach nur vergleichen, wer baut mehr Muskeln auf. Ja. Der mehr Kalorien isst. Ob du es glaubst oder nicht.
If protein's equated, then there doesn't seem to be a difference. There's also been some interesting aging studies. Sarcopenia or age-related muscle wasting is a big concern for the elderly. And again, there's been some large prospective cohorts that found that it doesn't matter what the source of protein is, it just matters that you're getting enough protein to prevent sarcopenia.
Ja, und das gilt für alles. Du kannst dich nur von reinem Pulver ernähren. Das Einzige, was deinen Körper juckt, ist, ob die Nährstoffe reinkommen. Ist völlig egal, wodurch die reinkommen. Du würdest dann natürlich, also, wenn ihr versteht, was ich meine. Also rein vom Biologischen jetzt, was der Körper verlangt, ist diese Aussage richtig. In Wirklichkeit würde das nicht funktionieren tatsächlich, aufgrund von anderen Sachen, wie zum Beispiel, dass du kauen musst. Du kannst nicht nur trinken. Bei dir wird die Zähne ausfallen, bei dir wird alles degenerieren im Mund. Weil du musst natürlich kauen. Und du musst schlucken und ja, schlucken ist sowieso, aber du brauchst halt feste Bestandteile. Also ansonsten werden sich da Sachen zurückentwickeln.
I would argue
Aber halt, das ist halt nicht die Frage, die auf dem Tisch liegt.
sarcopenia and muscle gain are very two different things.
They are
though.
different, but again, there is an anabolic effect of protein. It does prevent muscle wasting. If you can infer that data suggests that there's not a significant anabolic difference between animal and plant sources of protein.
Ja, das ist überraschend.
I believe there is if you just look for it, right? I think the bias is that you look for research supporting your overall
Zeig deine Evidenz.
conclusion.
No,
Whereas if you were to look for research opposing your conclusion, you might
Ja, cool, zeig deine Evidenz.
actually find a lot of it that would
no.
actually
A lot of it, cool, zeig deine Evidenz.
So over the last couple decades, there's been quite a few randomized trials comparing things like whey protein to soy, pea, rice protein isolates. Again, when proteins match, doesn't seem to really make a difference.
What year did those studies come out?
So again, between 2020 and now, basically.
So
again,
likewise, I have studies pulled up right in front of me, the role of anabolic properties of plant versus animal-based protein, in which they conclude that animal-based protein, while not maybe as rich in fiber, does have more anabolic properties than plant protein.
Well, hört sich nach Mechanistic Fuckery an. Uns interessieren Outcomes in Menschen.
Problem is, I care
Ich höre schon einfach nur in dem, was er sagt. Über das Paper weiß ich schon, wo das Problem liegt.
most about body composition changes and strength increases. So you can find some mechanistic research showing muscle.
Ja, da hat er es gerade gesagt. Mechanistic Research, ja. Du hast Studien, die zeigen, dass das Protein aus Fleisch 10-mal anaboler ist als durch Mechanismus 10-mal anaboler ist als Pflanzenprotein. Das kannst du zeigen. So, und dann, was nämlich passiert ist, dann kommen Studien an Menschen, wo die das Ziel haben, herauszufinden, baut man durch diese 10-mal anaboleren Proteine aus Tierprodukten mehr Muskeln auf. Und das kommt raus, nein. So, wen juckt der Mechanismus, irgendein Mechanismus? Die sind so anabol, die sind so anabol. Das verliert gegen die Evidenz der Health Outcomes oder der halt Muscle Growth Outcomes in Menschen. Das wird natürlich, also diese Outcomes superseden alles andere.
Protein synthesis postprandially is
So if
higher.
that is
Du hast Evidenz, wo die im Menschen zeigen, dass es weniger Muskelaufbau gibt. Well, zeigt das Paper.
the case, if that's what you care about, then we have a large cohort of people called bodybuilders.
Mhm.
Und?
They all seem to eat meat.
Okay.
Das ist nicht das hast du jetzt nicht wirklich gesagt, oder? Das hast du jetzt nicht wirklich gesagt. Du hast gerade nicht wirklich gesagt, weil wir Bodybuilder haben und die alle Fleisch essen, deswegen ist Fleisch besser. Das hast du jetzt nicht gesagt, oder?
There's a large
You said what you
cohort
care
of the
about
human
is body
population that
composition
smokes cigarettes.
And
Does
strength.
that mean cigarette smoking is, good for you? And I'm not saying animal protein
Ja, da hat er gerade einen Redactor laufen lassen auf dieser unfassbar schwachsinnigen Position. Alter,
is worse.
wo ist dein IQ? Ohne Scheiß. Ist das schon einstellig mittlerweile oder was ist los bei dir?
What I'm suggesting is it's just as good in terms of cannibalism.
Also wir Menschen sowas einfach, ich sag ja, ne, die sind so fern von Logik, das kann man sich gar nicht vorstellen. Die machen so eine Aussage und die sehen nicht automatisch das Problem an dieser Aussage.
So it would make sense if there's a cultural propensity to eat meat, and
Wait, you
it's
said
just as good
body
at muscle
composition.
building. You'd
You
see
have-
most bodybuilders eat meat.
Do you have a six-pack right now?
Not right now. I'm currently dieting. I probably need to lose
Do you have a six-pack right now?
like another 15-ish.
Have you
20
ever
pounds.
been lean enough to have
yeah.
like a legitimate shredded
Oh yeah.
six-pack?
I got
Yeah,
down
I've seen
to
footage.
well below 10%. I was probably around like 6-7% when I did a bodybuilding show years ago.
Okay. So I guess it's interesting because the things that you care about seem to also be present more so in populations that do eat the things that you think are not advantageous,
Like, what do you
or at
mean?
least ethically advantageous.
Was ist das wieder für ein dämlicher Fehlschluss? Wie folgt das?
Like you said, you care about strength and body composition. There's studies that show that there is a greater anabolic effect from animal proteins, but you said that that's
Well, again,
Das ist mechanistic speculation.
that's
Because you care
mechanistic.
about-
That's looking at muscle
You care
protein
about the
synthesis
results.
postprandial.
But
Genau.
if we look at one of the largest cohorts in the entire world, what are they eating? In
Well,
all
Er hat es immer noch nicht verstanden. Der hat doch gerade das Redactor davon laufen lassen. Der sagt das schon wieder. Du guckst einfach nur auf die Menschen und sagst, weil die Fleisch essen.
strength sports,
That's not a
Olympic
cohort.
sports,
That's
powerlifting,
yeah. So
strongmen.
Und weil die alle Fleisch essen, deswegen ist Fleischessen richtig. Also deswegen unterstützt das.
again,
Bodybuilding.
there's not a matched group. So if you were to show me a study where you have, two groups of bodybuilders,
Kann dir natürlich keine Studie zeigen.
Okay, so
Weil wenn er falls das jemand nicht verstanden hat, wenn der von Cohort redet, dann meint er, es gibt viele Menschen. Der redet von keiner Studie.
let's even break this down. Has there been any top 10 Olympians or even
Here we go. Die nächsten unendlich dummen Aussagen. Wenn kein Veganer in den Top 10 Olympics ist vegane Ernährung schlechter.
Even natural Olympian bodybuilders who have ate plant protein only.
Wie folgt das, dass es dann schlechter ist, wenn die das nicht haben?
Well, how many
Has there been any
astronauts are
top
vegan?
10 powerlifters?
Well, how many
or
astronauts
strongmen?
are vegan? How many U.S. presidents have been vegan? Yeah, like you're talking about a niche sport that not many people do, and then you're talking about a
I'm
niche
talking about
diet
any
that not many
performance
people do.
sport.
You wouldn't
Literally
expect to
pick
see
any
many
performance
vegans.
sport, from tennis even.
Actually, one of the world champion tennis players is vegan. I think she actually won gold at the Olympics recently. There were a few medalists at the Paris Olympics that were vegan.
Wie folgt aus irgendeiner Anzahl irgendwas?
Maybe define it as more so a sport which requires large amounts of muscle mass. So strength sports, I would say.
Well,
More-
sure, but again,
endurance sports,
strength
vegan,
sports are
sure.
Werden hier gerade ökonomische Fehlschüsse durch die Gegend geworfen?
extremely niche. Like, we care about them a
Sure.
lot, but nobody watches powerlifting. Nobody knows
I
any
agree.
good
We're
powerlifters.
not,
Like, if you
we're not,
mention
we're not
Ed
saying
Cohn,
it's
nobody
not
would know who he
niche,
is.
but we're not
Sorry?
saying it's niche, but like this is the niche that we operate in because it's of interest.
Well,
to us. So
right.
you're trying to make an argument that endurance sports can't be vegan. I think it might even be more beneficial as long as they have that base level of muscle mass.
I would say vegan diets are
cardiovascular.
probably more beneficial for endurance
Probably, yeah.
athletes because of like vasodilated properties of
Yeah,
plant
I would
foods
have
and
to agree
stuff.
there too.
But the point I'm making is like bodybuilding is a
Mhm.
very niche sport. Not many people do
Agreed.
it. Not many people do vegan diets. I'm postulating there isn't an anabolic difference between plant foods and animal foods. So when we live in a culture where it is just culturally normal to eat meat, you'd expect bodybuilders to almost entirely, just be meat eating, and you'd expect to see most Olympia competitors to like eat tons of meat. Just because that's culturally normal and there's no anabolic difference, so why would they, go on a plant-based diet? So
See, this
that's
is
Have you
where-
ever
evident.
competed in bodybuilding or
Sorry?
anything like that? Have you ever competed in any strength sports or bodybuilding?
I did a bodybuilding show.
Ich hab voll Bock auf Nudeln, Mann. Und zwar Nudeln mit Ketchup, lol.
I think it's been pretty much exactly like 10 years now.
Wisst ihr, was ich gleich Perverses mache? Ich mache gleich mein China-Süppchen mit Ketchup, Alter.
Du brauchst Kohlenhydrate, verstehst du das nicht? Kohlenhydrate.
Ja, vielen Dank, Mardev. Ich mache mir ja wegen dir ja nochmal extra Nudeln. Dankeschön. Danke für die 16 Bits. Ich hab übel Bock auf Nudeln mit Ketchup, Alter. Übel. Keine Ahnung warum.
The judging was fucked. The guy who beat me, who I think came in third, he didn't even have abs. Like,
Ja, aber das, was man mitnehmen kann aus solchen Katastrophen hier, was wir gerade gucken, ist einfach, du verstehst einfach, warum die Menschen Omnis sind. Du verstehst, warum der links ein Omni ist. Der bringt wirklich als Argumente, weil Bodybuilder Fleisch essen, deswegen ist Fleischessen besser für die Muskeln. Und er sieht den Fehlschluss daran nicht. Der sieht nicht, dass das nicht folgt.
I was fucking peeled. He was bigger than me, but no conditioning whatsoever. I came in really peeled, shredded, great body composition. If you look at my like profile photo on YouTube, that was me 2 weeks before the show. So I was looking fucking good. Not Olympia caliber, obviously.
Ja, der war mal übelst schlank, Alter, wenn ich mich an seine alten Videos erinnere. Der war mal minus 50 Kilo von jetzt. Der war mal richtig übelst schlank.
Obviously, but I was looking pretty good for a natural athlete who just, just does this recreationally.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying you don't look good. I think you look great. I just
Thanks.
think that the large swath of people is probably they're probably eating meat, and as
Alter, der bringt das jetzt nicht zum dritten Mal, oder? Alter, ich kann nicht mehr.
of that seeing success, right? So
Well-
I mean, yes, I'm not arguing against the fact that you can eat a plant-based diet or entirely plants and then still get gains, but I'm arguing that there's an interesting selection bias, like people choose to eat meat and seem to do very well in competing, and it's an interesting
Und folgt das oder folgt das nicht?
fact that is
Sag einmal, dass das folgt.
maybe a bug and not
Kaputte Schallplatte, das trifft sehr gut.
a feature, but to me it seems more of a feature.
Well, again, there's no
Again and again and again. Die Schallplatte leiert aus.
particular reason to think that. If you look at true ileal digestibility, there's very little difference between plant and animal foods. It's usually only like 1, 2, 3% difference. If you look at nitrogen balance studies, the slope and intercept for nitrogen balance identical between animal and plant foods. When you look at large prospective cohorts on sarcopenia, again, no difference between plant and animal foods. And when you look at clinical studies on the difference of plant and animal foods when it comes to body composition and strength changes, there doesn't appear to be any differences when protein is matched. So that all suggests to me that plant protein is just as anabolic. And again, since we live in a culture where meat eating is just the norm, you'd expect most bodybuilders to just eat, meat. We might have a day sometime when there's an Olympia bodybuilder who ends up going vegan. It's entirely possible. I don't know if that would end up really
Ja, und wenn die Top 10 Bodybuilder vegan sind, dann ist auf einmal Veganismus richtig für Muskelaufbau, ja?
changing your opinion on anything. Like, you could always use the excuse, well, he's a genetic anomaly, he's on a ton of gear. That's why I don't really care much about that data.
Ja, Kai Green war mal vegan, aber keine Ahnung, ob der vegan geblieben ist, wahrscheinlich nicht.
Like, this idea that, well, all the successful people are doing it, it can lead to some stupid things. Like, you can see in motorsports, everyone was having air intakes that were blowing air from the top of the engine down. Well, when people started making cars where the air intake was going at the bottom of the car up, that created more downforce, and then you could take corners way faster. In bicycling, there was a lot of really stupid theories when it came to rolling resistance on tires. There was like a huge trend of cycling.
Der lässt gerade die Redactus laufen übrigens, ne, um ihn irgendwie dazu zu bringen, nachzudenken, aber ich glaube, das bringt nichts. Also ja, viele Menschen machen etwas und es ist falsch. Hat schon mal jemand was von Sklaverei gehört? Ups.
Using like 23 millimeter tires that were super thin, super hard, but they thought because it created a...
Ja, und alle haben das Falsche gemacht. Und dann auf einmal haben die das gemacht, was der eine gesagt hat, weil es richtig war. Ups.
A smaller contact patch, that would be faster. Well, again, when data came...
Appeal to Popularity Fallacy heißt der Fehlschluss übrigens, falls jemand nachgoogeln will.
out and we started testing this.
Ist kein Hexenwerk, ehrlich.
And seeing the physics of rolling resistance, it turns out thicker tires are better, especially when you match it with a rim that's wider. So just because successful people are doing it, you could have like Tour de France winners with a 23 mil tire. He would have actually been faster if he used a thicker tire and went against the grain. So just because a lot of successful people are doing things, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best way or the only way. You could get as much,
Ja, das muss man denen unbedingt erklären, unbedingt.
if not better, success doing something else.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, but I think one more thing. I think this cohort is unique
Agree with you, genau. Und deswegen, also du stimmst ihm zu, dass du den Fehlschluss verstanden hast. Warum hast du ihn dann vorher dreimal gebracht?
in the fact that we would almost leverage anything to get more further progress. And experimentation is a big fancy of the cohort at large. It doesn't matter if you're successful or not. And I at least would hope that these groups of people would have at least tried something different to see if they can precipitate any amount of
When
progress
have you
within
ever
any
seen Ronnie Coleman try like a vegan diet, right? This is a guy from Texas,
right, and we
Barbecueville.
can't point to success, as you said. We can point to the fact that there's millions of bodybuilders. They're not all Ronnie Colemans, but they all try different things to get progress.
So the pushback against that would be, I think there's very few bodybuilders who just out of curiosity tried a vegan diet. And on top of that, if they didn't see any benefit, they might not have seen
Kai Green.
any downsides, but if they didn't see a benefit, why would they stay on the diet if they just liked meat, right? So if there's no difference in anabolism, but this diet you don't like as much because you don't get to eat the foods that you like, you wouldn't stick to it.
Richard,
So
what's
there's-
that YouTube
so that's right.
bodybuilder who went? Sorry, what's that YouTube bodybuilder? Is his name John Venus? I want to say he was vegan.
Oh yeah, that jackass.
Oh, he's not
I
vegan.
fucking hate him.
I don't know too much about him. I just remember he was a vegan bodybuilder for a long period of time and then put out some content saying it basically was inhibiting his ability to gain muscle. Now, obviously, that's a sample size of one in someone's anecdotal experience. So we know it doesn't really count for shit. But interesting anecdotal experience nonetheless, someone who was vegan for a long period of time and bodybuilding, and then stated that it was, inhibiting, his.
Haben die gerade über John Venus gesprochen oder habe ich mich verhört? Ja, John Venus ist der eine, gegen den Vegan Gains dann eine Debatte im Endeffekt gemacht hat und der zu einem bestimmten Zeitpunkt nicht sagen konnte, ob Hitler schlecht war. Also der hat halt Traits gebracht und der hat schon wieder, ne, der bringt immer diese Hitler und Judenverfolgung und sowas immer an. Und ja, der hat halt seine Traits benutzt, daraus halt eine Reductio gebastelt und der konnte dann auf einmal, weil der John Venus logisch konsistent bleiben wollte, konnte auf einmal nicht mehr beantworten, ob Hitler schlecht war.
His ability to make progress.
You can actually find anecdotes of the exact opposite. Patrick Baboumian, he was the Germany's strongest man, I think for 2 years. He also had the German log press record at one point. And he also broke a world record with the yoke lift, like back in the 2010s or something. He actually said he was worried that if he switched to a vegan diet, he'd lose strength and everything. But when he switched, he actually got stronger. His performance improved.
Was he using anabolics?
Yeah, well, yeah. He was using anabolics the entire time though, so that wasn't a factor that got modified.
I think
he could have increased the doses. He could have added different compounds, peptides. That's
the problem, right? When we start putting in.
Well, again, you're just saying these anecdotes don't matter because we can always find some excuses.
Yeah.
Like I could say John Venus is just a fucking retard or something, right? So.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that. I'm not putting any weight into these anecdotes. I think.
Speaking of bodybuilding, since we're on the topic, there's been a lot of bodybuilders who have died, gotten heart disease, stuff like that. One big risk factor for heart disease is obviously LDL cholesterol. Eating
that
all
does
that
not exist. LDL cholesterol does not exist. That is a calculation.
Das hat er jetzt nicht wirklich gesagt, oder? What the fuck passiert mit diesem Typen? Das hast du nicht. Du hast gerade nicht gesagt, LDL-Cholesterin existiert nicht. Das hast du nicht gesagt.
Eating
that
all
does
that
not exist. LDL cholesterol does not exist. That is a calculation. Lipoproteins, like low density lipoproteins or high density lipoproteins.
Okay, well, we could talk about ApoB specifically. We can talk about total particle count. So ApoB, if you'd prefer, if you want to get extremely technical, ApoB is the actual protein carrier of the cholesterol molecule. If you're eating a lot of meat, especially red meat, that's higher in saturated fat, you are going to elevate your serum cholesterol score, and that is the principal risk factor for heart disease. So some of these strength athletes and bodybuilders, you might want to find alternative protein sources like tofu or, beans, lentils, seitan is really good. That actually has very similar macros to just meat. So if you can bring your cholesterol levels down, you can prevent some of these, heart attacks that are killing bodybuilders.
Sure, you could, but I would also argue you don't need to be eating high saturated fat content foods that are also, you could eat lean meats, for instance. You could eat fish, which is a big
The
favorite of us.
problem with eating lean meat, however, is that most of the cholesterol in the food is contained in the lean muscle tissue. So
do you realize
itself,
how much cholesterol you're actually able to absorb through your small intestine now? It's a very small fraction.
So it's
meaning like pick one receptors. Do you know how much that actually is percentage-wise?
Yeah, so
versus...
it's about 10 to 15%. But if you look at the data, there's a really good N. Hopkins meta-analysis on this. Going from a daily cholesterol intake of about 500 milligrams per day to 0, for most people, that will lower their LDL cholesterol or ApoB by about 10 to 15%. There are some
hyper responders. People are also immobile. They're immobilized. They're unhealthy, and they're generally not.
That's just in normal people.
Ja, jemandem zu erzählen, dass, wie viele Rezeptoren, es gibt schon wieder diese Mechanistic Fuckery, wie immer. Weißt du, wie viel Cholesterin überhaupt aufgenommen wird und sowas? Zum Glück haben wir Studien an Menschen. Zum Glück kann man dort sehen, Und man switcht die Ernährung, steigert Fettanteil, Cholesterinanteil und man sieht, der Cholesterinspiegel steigt. Was interessiert mich, wie viel der Körper aufnimmt, wie viele Rezeptoren der hat? Ich sehe die Endergebnisse. Ich muss nicht spekulieren und ich muss auch nicht auf Mechanistik Data zurückgreifen, wo steht, dass der Körper nur 15% aufnehmen kann. Das interessiert mich wie? Ich sehe im größten Paper, was jemals gemacht wurde, zu LDL, Cholesterin und Herz-Kreislauf-Erkrankungen, einen log-linearen Zusammenhang. Log-linear. So, du willst mir was erzählen?
So I would say your argument has no value because, at least for me and Adam, we look at hundreds of lab interpretations I would say every 6 months I see at least 60 lab interpretations where I have people get lipoproteins tested, all of the lipoproteins, and then the particle counts between each. And I find typically, even with people eating red meat, that lipoprotein B is not elevated, which is my most concerning pathogenic molecule.
What do you mean by elevated?
It's not outside of reference range, and it's certainly not even in the elevated
reference range. So reference ranges aren't
I understand what the reference
ideal.
range is, but it's not at the upper end of the reference range, right? And I think
Well,
that what we
lower's
see
better.
is that these people.
So, erzählt er gerade, also erstens erzählt er Anekdoten natürlich, ne? So, erzählt er gerade, dass wenn man den LDL-Cholesterinspiegel anhebt, der ApoB-Anteil nicht steigt, oder was?
Correct, sure.
Generally improve health when they restrict saturated fat content or in general content of any fat because they stop eating as much, and most people are fat as fuck.
Well,
and so if you stop people from being fat as fuck, well,
is a
it
big
does
risk factor.
reduce total cholesterol, it
Absolutely.
does reduce total triglycerides, it does improve insulin sensitivity, all of which are things which correlate as well to cardiovascular disease. So I would argue that it's actually not as much of the cholesterol directly as more of the calories and the exemplary.
Ach ja, würde mit dir gerne Nutrivore sprechen. Holy shit, erzähl mir das mal Nutrivore.
Examples that we have in
Das wäre ein Fest.
people who are insulin resistant
So
via the copious amount.
Nutrivore ist der größte Freak im Thema Cholesterin, den ich kenne, Alter. Der hat schon so viele Cholesterin-Debatten geführt, das ist, Alter, wie der diese Omnis zerklatscht in den Debatten. Ja, das ist komplett andere Epistemik als ich habe zum Beispiel. Ich kann da nur mit offenem Mund sitzen, also das ist komplett anderes Level.
Of calories that they're consuming.
So
Erzähl diese Scheiße mal Nutrivore.
you are kind of technically right here. Dietary cholesterol alone is not the most significant factor on your lipid profile. It's below saturated fat. But again, you could...
Es ist von der Wichtigkeit ganz oben ApoB. Danach kommt LDL-Cholesterin, dann erst Cholesterinspiegel, ja.
reduce your cholesterol score by about 10 to 15% on average, and there are some hyper-responders. They seem to be about 10 to 20% of the population, where you see even greater reductions of around 20 to 30%.
Ja, und wie man auch sowas erklären kann, wie jemand isst irgendwie mehr Fleisch und sein ApoB oder was steigt nicht an. Kann das sein, dass die Person, die mehr Fleisch isst, etwas anderes weglässt? Und jetzt anderes ist sowas wie Kokosöl. Andere gesättigte Fette weglässt und das deswegen nicht ansteigt. War das nicht irgendwie dieser übelst fette Betrug damals bei der Bolt-Studie, bei dieser Pro-Meat-Studie, die gezeigt haben, dass du isst mehr Fleisch und du wirst gesünder, konnten ja an Menschen zeigen. Und wenn man genau hingeguckt hat, in das Paper kam raus, die haben mehr Fleisch gegessen, irgendwie 10 oder 20% mehr Fleisch gegessen, haben aber gleichzeitig die Fettmenge und die Cholesterinmenge, die Fettmenge und die Kalorienmenge gesenkt. Daher die Health Effects, also der BMI ist runtergegangen, deswegen sind die gesünder geworden, lol. Haben aber mehr Fleisch gegessen. So, du kannst ins Paper reinschreiben, mehr Fleisch, bessere Gesundheit. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
So that kind of reduction in cholesterol does significantly reduce heart disease risk over time. So that is still something you would want to be
Ja, dazu haben wir die größten Paper.
interested in. And on top of that, Plant sources
There's
of protein
also an
also
inverse
contain
use-
fiber. Fiber also low.
Boah, ich werde Nutrivore mal fragen, ob der den da debattieren kann, ohne Scheiß. Ich bin ja mit Nutrivore auf privat. Ich frage den einfach mal. Das wäre ein einziges Fest.
Lowers your cholesterol score even further. So when you're talking
But there's
about
also
replacement,
there's also
Ich frage den heute noch.
there's also phytolipids, right, which also contribute to your total cholesterol count. There's also an inverse U curve with total cholesterol, where if you have too little, you also
Oh mein Gott, jetzt spricht er dieses Paper an. Oh mein Gott. Diese U-shaped Curve, das hat der Nutrivore mal behandelt. Oh mein Gott. Ich finde den Livestream leider nicht mehr und der war so übelst genial. Der zeigt das U-shaped Curve, ne? Du ab einer bestimmten Punkt, ich weiß nicht mehr, was das war, irgendwie Gesamtcholesterin 150 oder sowas, das niedrigste Risiko, und dann, wenn du nach links gehst, geht die Kurve halt hoch, weil es halt U-shaped ist. Also je weniger Cholesterin du hast, umso höher ist das Risiko. Das wäre so geil, wenn Vegan Gains das jetzt erklären könnte.
you do develop. Yes, there
No.
is. You do develop. This is
I can explain
absolutely
why.
solidified
Oh, der weiß warum. Let's go.
I can explain why.
Mendelian randomizing control trials.
No, actually,
do have-
Mendelian randomization studies debunked that idea. When you
Was zum Teufel labert er? Du hast Mendelian Randomization Studies davon? Was redest du da?
look at Mendelian randomization studies, people with genetically lower cholesterol levels live longer, and you actually see a greater presence of those alleles in elderly populations because the people
Der behauptet einfach das genaue Gegenteil von dem, was die Wissenschaft zeigt. Diese größten Paper, von denen ich rede, da sind inkludiert die Mendelian Genetic Studies.
who don't have those good genetics,
Aber nice try.
they end up dying. So Mendelian randomization studies have actually debunked that idea, and there has actually been a very good study
Boah, Alter, wird Nutrivore sich freuen.
published where they accounted for reverse causation. So they included things like lag time. They got rid of anybody who had diseases like cancer. And again, they actually didn't find that inverse U curve.
So
Ja, aber der hat die U-Curve jetzt nicht erklärt, warum das eine U-Curve ist. Ah, shit.
in your mind, then the longest lifespan, let's just say
Und ich weiß, ich kann mich nicht genau erinnern, woran das nochmal lag. Das lag irgendwie, ja, woran lag das nochmal? Sozioökonomisch oder sowas? Kann das sein? Dass die niedrigere Cholesterinspiegel haben, das waren irgendwie arme Menschen oder sowas, und die sind schneller gestorben, deswegen haben die deswegen ist die U-shaped Curve entstanden. Und das war sowas richtig, richtig Bananiges. Aber ja, der hat damals auf ein Video reagiert. Also der Nutrivore auf ein Video von einem Omni, der hat irgendwie, ich weiß nicht, ob das dieser eine Keto-Clown war, aber der hatte, glaube ich, über 1 Million Abonnenten. Und der hat natürlich als Low-Carber, ganz klar, ne, als Low-Carber und Vegetarier, ne, wisst ja, wie die drauf sind. Hat natürlich Video drüber gemacht und gesagt, hier, guckt mal an, hier ist der ultimative Beweis, wir haben endlich den Beweis, ne, unter 150 schlecht. Wir haben den ultimativen Beweis, U-shaped Curve. Und dann hat er das Video auseinandergenommen. Fuck. Ich würde das so gern nochmal gucken.
say super centenarians, what would
Weil der ist ins Paper reingegangen und hat das analysiert. Und der ist der größte Freak, den ich kenne. Also ich kenne niemand mit diesem epistemologischen Level wie der. Einfach nur insane.
your lay of the land be in terms of their dietary intake normally?
Well, actually, the oldest living population currently known today is the Californian Adventist vegetarians. I think they have an average life expectancy.
Ich werde im nächsten Livestream von ihm, werde ich ihn fragen auch noch. Also ich schreibe dem gleich, aber danach werde ich ihn fragen, ob er darauf reagieren kann, damit er das nochmal erwähnt mit der U-shaped Curve.
Of 87 between both men and women. They live on average 10 years longer than your average American.
Nochmal?
An average life expectancy of 87. Living population currently known today is the Californian Adventist vegetarians. I think they have an average life expectancy of 87 between both men and women. They live on average 10 years longer than your average American. There is the Okinawans in Japan. they have a greater amount of centenarians, so people living over 100, but their average life expectancy is actually lower. So the reason you see so many people in that population living to over 100 is probably more to do with genetics. There's just a greater amount of people with those sorts of alleles, like, low cholesterol, stuff like that. Some of it might have to do with small religious minorities. A lot of them are Buddhists, so some of them are actually strict vegans. They won't even eat fish. So that might have something to do with it too. And then there's Hong Kong. They're very long living, but it's only the women that live particularly long. The men also live long, but not quite as long as the women. So the population with the highest average life expectancy is the Californian Adventist vegetarians. So if I were to make a dietary recommendation for people if they want to live the longest, it would be a plant-based dietary pattern, high in fruits and vegetables, lots of beans and lentils, tofu.
So where would you get your omega-3 content then? Because we all know that alpha-linoleic acid is very poorly converted into a usable form of
so there's a lot of kind of controversy around that. The best research suggests that it might have either no benefit or small benefit when it comes to heart disease prevention. As far as the populations that seem to be most benefited from EPA DHA, it'd probably be pregnant women and children. I haven't really seen much compelling evidence that in adult men or women who are not planning to become pregnant, that it really improves any health parameters. There might be a small benefit, but I haven't seen much. If you are interested in getting EPA DHA on a vegan diet, and you don't want to rely on your own conversion, you can just take an algae-based DHA supplement. That's where the fish get it. The fish actually don't produce EPA DHA. They get it from algae. So you can get it directly from the source, and EPA DHA supplements also aren't contaminated.
Ja, wie alles, was die Omnis haben wollen aus den Tieren, das kriegen die Tiere von Pflanzen.
With pollutants that are found in fish. So might actually be a safer source.
Well, I have to go, unfortunately,
Yeah,
guys.
no problem.
Oh ja, bitte.
Can't stay on all night.
Lass uns diesen Albtraum hier heute beenden, please.
But I appreciate you getting on, man. This has been fun.
Yeah.
Interesting discussion.
I like your channel, dude. I'll keep watching.
Auf Nimmerwiedersehen. Ja, ich würde den da links gern nochmal wiedersehen in einer Debatte gegen Nutrivore. Das wäre die größte Annihilierung aller Zeiten.
Maybe we can have another talk
Dem erzählst du mal was über Cholesterin.
some other time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Bless your hearts. I do have to go, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in if you're watching the live. Adam, thank you for being here from South Africa currently and risking your life. Thank you, Vegan Gains, for stepping in and having a conversation with us. And yeah, thank you for the fucking swaths of people that commented and viewed. So I appreciate you all. Have a beautiful night, all right?
All right, take care,
Thanks,
dude.
guys.
Ja. Ja, was soll man sagen? Katastrophendebatte. Ja, ich meine, an dem Typen, ja, gut, der hat einfach überall reingebissen, aber ja, es ist debattiert technisch natürlich, finde ich schlimm. Mag ich gar nicht, aber war jetzt auch nicht zu schlimm, aber so irgendwie Mittelfeld, würde ich sagen. Aber ja, Coach Kolton natürlich, ja. Absolute Katastrophe, was soll man sagen. Aber ich meine, der lehnt Tierrechte ab, also der lehnt keine weiteren Fragen.